Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire is a monster movie uniting the two famous titans against an otherworldly threat. This movie takes place a few years after the events of Godzilla vs. Kong. Quick spoiler warning for that movie. If you haven't seen it, go watch it if you like epic monster movies with subpar stories. Then you can come back and watch this review. So Godzilla is still fighting the good fight against other titans that threaten humanity, while King Kong has been living down in Hollow Earth, which was discovered in the last movie. Monarch has been observing Kong and studying the ecosystem down there, but of course it's a vast world, so there is still much to be discovered. In some of Hollow Earth's uncharted depths, a civilization of Kongs is found, and their emergence poses a threat to civilization, forcing King Kong and Godzilla to defend humanity. So this movie could honestly pull off an alternate title, Kong, The New Empire, because Godzilla really takes the backseat in this one. He looms through much of the movie doing sneaky Godzilla things, while Kong roams around the depths of Hollow Earth, driving the story forward. But that part of the movie was good. It's a very simple, kind of tooth and claw visual story of Kong challenging the Alpha, but I actually enjoyed it a lot more than the narrative carried out by the human characters. This feels like a good time to say that I'm just not crazy about the MonsterVerse movies. I get that they're supposed to just be epic beatdown spectacle films, but they often put a large focus on their human characters and the stories around said beatdowns, which should be a good thing because it's often not the what that makes a film good, it's the why. My problem with the MonsterVerse movies is that the stories are often subpar, and this movie just continues that trend. The story here mostly makes sense despite being a little bit over elaborate. It is cohesive, but it is not amazing. Some offenses include characters being unrealistically comfortable and blasé about giant dangerous monsters being in close proximity, cheesy characters that arguably don't need to be included, and worst of all, the utter lack of concern for the collateral damage and the myriad of lives lost and families ruined. That last one is a big one. The fact that nobody ever stops to solemnly let that sink in, but they do show sympathy for the giant gorilla, is a little bit silly. Tragic events unfold, but they don't treat it like a tragedy, making the movie feel emotionless and a bit dull. I do appreciate that this movie had fewer characters than Godzilla vs. Kong. That one felt like it had too many characters and not enough to do with them to make them feel like big players. This one has a smaller cast and only one character that didn't really need to be in the movie. I'm talking about Bernie, played by Brian Tyree Henry. He easily could have been written out of the movie. He is the comic relief, and that's it. And much like the previous movie, the humor is pretty generic. For example, there is one point where a guy is crying and somebody goes, "Are you crying?" To which he gets all embarrassed and is like, no. He's a dude and he's crying. Classic. So epic kaiju battles are the reason to watch this movie. The showdowns are packed with monumental action. It's hard to watch them without getting an ASMR rush, especially in the big climactic battle at the end. It was so big and beautiful. With big CGI monster fights being the main attraction of this movie, this feels weird to say, but I actually kind of wish the movie had been shorter, trimming out some of the story around said battles. There is a solid chunk of the movie, somewhere around the transition between the first and second acts, that focuses on driving the plot forward, setting the monster battles aside for a while. Like I said, normally it's better this way, but with how generic everything was going on with the human characters, I just wanted more monster beatdowns. The lack of seriousness in the narrative makes everything that could have felt dark, like fights being lost and characters being threatened, feel pretty inconsequential. From the dialogue to the decisions being made by characters, this movie feels totally afraid to do anything bold, so it just sticks to standard, cookie-cutter, high-budget popcorn movie thrills. This is especially noticeable considering the recent success of Godzilla Minus One, which is a great example of the story around the kaiju being handled well. Just to be clear, that movie is not part of the MonsterVerse. It's a post-war Japanese movie about those affected by Godzilla's attacks because he is the antagonist of the film, as he should be. There is so much darkness and so many heavy emotions that carry that movie. It touches your heart by also breaking it a little bit. This movie does not touch your heart, which is fine. I didn't go into this movie expecting that. I went into it with the knowledge that the MonsterVerse primarily delivers spectacle over story. There should obviously still be a cohesive story that justifies why these monsters are duking it out. I'm not saying there shouldn't be one at all. I just wish less time was spent fleshing out an underwhelming story to set up all the glorious action in this movie. As much as the action in this movie is awesome, I was still a little bit disappointed. Big CGI battles just aren't enough for a movie to rely solely on nowadays. If you are caught up on this franchise and you want to see CGI monsters beat each other up, go for it. Just be sure to curb whatever excitement might be left over from Godzilla Minus One. But if you were wondering if it's worth it to catch up on the other movies leading up to this one, I would say that that is a lot of hours to spend on a generally underwhelming franchise. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please consider giving it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Asphalt City.